It's the most wonderful time of the year. For store keeps it's tragic, 'cause merchandise magically disappears. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
When I lived in California, from time to time, I would lecture a group of writers and reporters on interviewing and research techniques. So sometimes I would start off the class by asking all the brainiacs out there if there were any lying egomaniacs among us.
My friends get together in fair and cold weather, cause havoc and then run away. If I get arrested, I'll cry that they're racist, and then I'll be out the next day. It's the most...
And of course, they all looked at each other pretty darn confident that whoever good old Colin was talking about, they were not talking about them. So I had to break the bad news to him that I probably was, and I had to remind him of that famous quote, probably the most famous journalism quote of the last 100 years from a woman named Janet Malcolm. She wrote a book called The Murderer and the Journalist. No, The Journalist and the Murderer, sorry. And here's her quote. The reporter is kind of a confidence man, preying on people's vanity, ignorance, or loneliness, gaining their trust, betraying them without remorse. Like the credulous widow who wakes up one day to find the charming young man and all of her savings gone. So the consenting subject of a piece of nonfiction learns, when the article or book appears, his hard lesson. Journalists justify their treachery in various ways according to their temperaments. The more pompous talk about freedom of speech and the public's right to know. The least talented talk about art. The seemliest murmur about earning a living. So once we got the whole lying and treachery thing out of the way, I'd ask him about egomaniacs. Got any egomaniacs in the room? Any outsized egos here? Anybody with inflated senses of their own self-worth? Of course, all the humble journalists out there were looking at the other people, pretty much knowing that everybody else was ego, had a bunch of ego, but all they had was pure talent and skill. Then I had to break the bad news to them, which was, when you're a reporter, including everybody in that room, every day you sit down to write something with the idea that the 200, 300, 400,000 people who subscribe to your paper, the most important thing they can do the next day is to take your article and make it the most important thing of their lives. That's ego. When you have a room full of reporters in a newsroom, 25, 30, 45, 50 at a mid-sized paper. Every single one of those people in that room, I was guilty of this when I was a reporter. Every single one of the people in that room is absolutely convinced they're not just the best reporter in that room, they're the best writer-reporter in the whole damn country. That's why they like spending time on all these really long, boring stories that you see so often in newspapers. That's why when you pick up a newspaper now and you look to like the business section or the local news section or the net front page, you'll see so many stories written by the wire service and not that many stories written by the staff. The people more than a couple years ago, when these hedge funds started buying newspapers, the first thing they figured out was, especially on these old legacy papers, is that their product, their business model wasn't worth a damn, but they sure owned a lot of real estate. So they'd go in, strip out the real estate, sell the business to the next loser, and take away their winnings. But a lot of the guys maybe the people who stuck around a little bit longer, the second thing they did after looking at the hard assets of the paper and what they could sell off and what they could rent instead of own, Second thing they did was they look at all these prima donnas in the newsroom, the people that, would write one story a week, one story every 2 weeks. And these guys are looking around going, why are we hiring all these people when 80% of the stuff on our paper is wire service? And you look at them and the guys that, again, are not in the business, that are just kind of flinty-eyed about it, they'd be reading these stories, these Pulitzer Prize winning stories, supposedly. That's what the reporters thought they were. They'd look at them and they'd go, what, we paid somebody 2 weeks to write this pile of crap? Nobody cares about this. Part of the thing about having an inflated ego is that you also inflate the value of the stories that you're writing. Every story becomes the most important story in the world. If your guy just came in and plunked down $100 million for that paper and all of its assets, or maybe whatever the number is, you're not going to be overly impressed with some kid with a journalism degree that writes stories way too long and way not often enough. That's why these guys, they cut a lot of these newsrooms to the bone. That's why a lot of reporters are losing their jobs, because nobody figured that out, that they were not really as good as they all thought they were. They weren't as indispensable as they thought they were. In fact, a lot of them really weren't that good at their jobs. They were kind of boring and predictable. So we try to stay away from that around here. But every once in a while, I still can't help but looking at a story that we're involved in, can't help but look at it and go, that's the worst story in the world. That's the most important story in the world. So everybody stop what you're doing and listen to this podcast or watch my video, damn it. We just did that here a week or so ago. I came across a story from a newspaper in Philadelphia written by our old buddy up there, Janice Armstrong. And the story, I thought it was the worst newspaper column I'd ever read in my entire life. It was the story of this. It was the consequences, the fallout from a story we talked about here. The young black guy who killed the upcoming white business guy with everything to live for. Oh yeah, the black guy basically had nothing to live for. He was just a loser with knife fantasies. Anyway, kills the white guy. You've heard the story. If you didn't, look it up. Skellenegger. And a jury finds him not guilty. Well, this Janice Armstrong, the columnist, found the lawyer, the black female lawyer who joined his legal team, in no small part because a black jury will listen to a black female lawyer more than a white lawyer. And she was a major part of the reason he got off. And I thought this was a really, really strange column, because this columnist and her friend just happened to run into the killer, the black killer, Michael White. And she was like pumping his hand and offering him congratulations. And whoever she was with gave him a big bear hug. I mean, as if this guy's like, Martin Luther King III.
The question of the day is, with all the injustices, the harassment, and the aggression that we see toward black people every day, do you feel unsafe around white people?
And she really tried to turn this killer into some kind of black hero, because she said this case was about, the racial tensions that exist in Philadelphia. Well, it is, if that's how you see every single story, which is what she does.
And most people think black people can't be racist either, by the way.
But it's not if you just see it as a really, really disturbed 19-year-old guy who takes a kitchen knife out, a French knife out, and plunges it into the back of a 39-year-old business guy. That's murder. So this was just a couple days ago. I was raising my hands in the air going, stop. Worst story in the world. Worst story in the world. I think I found one that's worse. So I'm kind of acting like all these prima donnas in the newsroom. Every single thing I touch now, I'm going to declare the worst thing in the world. Well, that was the worst newspaper column. This might be the craziest news story, and it's all tied into New Jersey. So you guys saw the story a couple days ago. A couple of black people, at least two, maybe three. They go into a black neighborhood on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Jersey City. Take some guns into a Jewish delicatessen, and they start killing people, including a cop. And it was weird because it just took a long time for people to figure out what happened. We had the congresswoman from Detroit. What's her name? I forget her name. Rashid, Elon, or whatever, Elon something or other. She put out a tweet saying, "My heart is broken. White supremacy." This was like a day or two after we knew that black people were the ones killing Jewish people in Jersey City. And then, as if we needed it, we got a reminder from the Wall Street Journal, and I'm glad they actually put this in their story because it's absolutely accurate. Anyway, we got a little reminder from the Wall Street Journal about what's what in Jersey City, New Jersey. So they go in and they quote some anti-violence coalition, a woman by the name of Pam Johnson. She talks about all the violence in Jersey City, how it's all about poverty, and it's about this and about that. The neighborhood has long grappled with poverty and violent crime, said this anti-crime, anti-violence bureaucrat. And she said it's really a lack of economic opportunity rather than organized gangs. That's at the root. But then she got to the nut graph, the last graph in this Wall Street Journal story. Mrs. Johnson said she was horrified by the attack on the kosher grocery, but she wants to make sure the daily trauma suffered by the neighborhood's African American community is not overlooked. This has been going on there for a very long time, she said. Boy, whenever you threaten a fella or a lovely lady's victimization, they hit the panic button. Here we got this woman whose main job is supposed to be anti-violence, and some black people go in there and kill some Jewish people. But the most important thing to her is to remind people that nobody's going to cut in front of us in line when we're in the victimhood line. No, if you want to be in the victimhood line, get in back. And guess what? It's a really long line. So we've been doing these stories about black on Jewish crime for so long. And so many people are so eager to ignore it. You know, the people that get me who ignore it the most is the Anti-Defense League, the Anti-Defamation League. That's a group that was set up to fight Nazi propaganda against the Jews or whatever. So you got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples of black on Jewish violence in Brooklyn and around the rest of the city of New York on video. Harassment, threats, violence. 99.9% of that is black on Jewish. I saw one case where an Arab guy is, speeding around the corner in a limo. He sees a Jewish guy dressed in Orthodox clothing, jams on the brake, gets out, and runs and chases him around the neighborhood before catching him and assaulting him. Other than that, it's a black thing. There was one case where everybody said, yeah, it's an Hispanic kid beating up that Jewish person. It wasn't. It was a black person. But we cannot get the Jewish people of New York to stand up and go, hey, why are you targeting us? Why? Why are black people targeting Jewish people? City Councilwoman Laurie Cumbo got us all straight a couple years ago when she said the reason that there's so much black on Jewish violence is because black people feel that Jewish people do not share their success. And now we come to the craziest story of the week, day, month, year, whatever. From our old buddies at the New York Times. So this came out like the day, well, you'll hear it, they'll tell you, it came out like the day after the big shooting in Jersey City. Here's the headline. With the rise of far-right extremists, NYPD creates a special unit. Subhead, threats from far-right and neo-Nazi organizations including groups like the Proud Boys, will be investigated. I was going to read a couple paragraphs of this, then we'll get to the nut graph of it. For almost 2 decades, the Intelligence Bureau of the New York Police Department has built a security apparatus designed to track international terror groups like Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Now the department is aiming those resources at a different target: far-right extremist hate groups. That's all you need to know, really. This is the day after the shooting where a bunch of black people go out to target Jewish people. The next day, the mayor of New York decides that this is all about white terrorism, right-wing terrorism directed at people in New York. And all they could come up with was the Proud Boys. I met the Proud Boys. I met them about a year ago. I think it was Cernovich's party up in New York City. There was like 20 of them there. They all had sitting together. They had nice shirts on. They were very friendly, very sociable. Everybody had groomed well. When they figured out who I was, they come up and surrounded me and shook my hand and said how nice it was to meet me and how much they liked what I was doing. There was no hate. There was no threat of violence. There was nothing sinister about them. I kind of got a men go their own way vibe off them, a MGTOW vibe off them. I kind of got that they were some kind of reaction to the beta male culture that's being enshrined and encouraged and elevated all over the country, where men are not allowed to act like men, stick up for themselves and their family. Instead, we're supposed to cower and act incompetent whenever we can. Now, that's the vibe I got off them. They were just young guys. A few months later, I see that, they're being attacked. I think it was either Antifa or somebody else up in New York City is attacking them. Well, they didn't just put their hands up and beg for mercy. They fought back and won. And for that, they got sent to prison. They never attacked anybody. They don't have any problem with Jews. They don't have any problem with black people. They don't have any problem with self-defense either. But for the mayor of New York to declare that they are now going to stop watching the people who took down the towers, the number one purveyor of terror on the whole planet, the Muslims, and we're going to concentrate on these big bad white people. By the way, it's not just the Proud Boys. Every single white person in America is a racist terrorist. You know that, correct? And the more you deny it, the more you are guilty of it. That's like, there's some soft drinks that have, if you read the label on the side, it says sodium on it, salt. So the more you drink, the thirstier you get. Now that's a racket. Just like that racket. The more you deny you're a racist, that proves you are a racist. I don't know why so many people are so eager to apologize and to assert they're not racist when it doesn't get them anything other than putting them in a category of being an even softer target. So don't do that anymore out there, you guys. Anyway, so de Blasio points to this thing that happens in Jersey City, and he goes, what we saw yesterday was premeditated, violent, anti-Semitic hate crime. In other words, you could say it was an act of terror. De Blasio has really, really been silent on this whole business of the black people targeting Jewish people in New York. Nobody wants anything to do with that. Most of all, the Jewish leaders in New York. You can't figure that one out. But even as they're sitting there explaining to the rest of us, great threat that white people are posing to the peace-loving people of New York City, we had another catastrophe happen over near Columbia University at a place called Barnard College, which is the sister college to Columbia University. If you don't know where that is, if it's not in Harlem, it's on the fringe of Harlem. 18-year-old white girl from Virginia. Her dad's a college professor from Virginia. She decides she wants to go to school in the big city. She goes up to New York, and within a couple of months, she finds herself dead.
Police are investigating the tragic stabbing death of an 18-year-old Barnard College student. Investigators say a group of men in Morningside Park mugged and repeatedly stabbed Tessa Major. So far, no arrests have been made, but all of this has left the college community on edge. Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burkett live in Morningside Heights with more. NJ.
And right, Dave, this is the 116th Street entrance to Morningside Park. This is where the victim staggered and collapsed and died of multiple stab wounds. I want to give you a sense now, Dave, of the crime scene itself. This is the staircase that the victim walked up, apparently coming to seek help. She then went, the stabbing apparently took place at the base of the staircase down over in that area there. You know, it's a high-profile, high-priority case. Crime scene investigators still on the scene, as you would expect. I'm told police are making progress in the investigation, but so far no suspects and no arrests. It happened just inside the park at around 5:30 last evening, 1 hour after sunset. Tessa Majors, a Barnard freshman from Virginia, is confronted by several young men, perhaps even teenagers. They want her cell phone. Police say she resisted, and in the struggle, she was stabbed. I'm told police are now beginning to recover surveillance video. Some of it, I'm told, shows young men running from the park.
You know, as you read the stories, there are many, many stories on this. You read the comments from the many, many people who went to Columbia and Barnard. They're all saying the same thing. I went there in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. They go right up to the present, last year. They say, yeah, I went there. And the older, slightly older people say, yeah, they used to tell us in orientation, don't even think about going over there. No, it's too dangerous. They didn't come out and say, yeah, that's where black people hang out. But that was clearly what was going on there. When people at Columbia, students at Columbia are attacked on campus, off campus, it is the fellas. If you doubt that, go to Columbia University, look up security force or police department. Look up Cleary reports. When you get to the Cleary reports, hit the button that says PDF. You'll see a picture and you'll see a story. So violence against students at Columbia in New York is the same as violence against students at Temple or USC or lots of other colleges around the country. How about the University of Illinois, Chicago, 2 weeks ago? Cute little 19-year-old girl whose parents came from India. She's walking back to her parking garage after getting off work. A fella sees her. He's not too long out of prison. Sits there to try to use the old prison charm on her. She walks by him without saying anything. He killed her. So it's open season on these co-eds on college campuses at these liberal colleges. And we cannot help but think that when you go to these colleges, especially, these women's colleges are kind of a cut apart. It's very much, and they tell you this, they're very much social justice warrior training grounds. Other colleges, you go like MIT and they go, we'll make you an engineer. University of Chicago, we'll make you an economist. Go to language school. We'll teach you how to teach Japanese, teach you how to speak Japanese. Konnichiwa. But when you go to one of these Seven Sisters schools, oh no, they want to teach you how to change the world by being a liberal activist. This is probably off the point, but I still remember the story like it was yesterday. So one of my buddies was a big-time professor, department chair, at one of the campuses of the University of California. I will not tell you which campus. So I'm talking to him one day, and we're smoking cigars. He goes, Colin, I can't get people to sign up for the classes. It's in urban studies. He was chair, probably doxing him. He was chair of the urban studies department because we can't get enough kids to sign up for the classes. What can we do? He knew I was supposed to be some kind of marketing guru. Well, at least he knew that a lot of rich people paid me a lot of money to do that kind of stuff back then, before I walked away from that and closed the door on it by doing stuff like this. I said, yeah, sure, I'll come up. He just wanted me to come up and talk to us, have lunch with his faculty at a faculty meeting. I said, sure, I'll do that. Go up there, start talking to people and say, I like to ask questions. Just ask them questions. Finally, the secretary of the department, she was getting a little impatient. She said, listen, why not? She came up with the big winner, the big magic bullet. Listen, we got to get some pens and pencils, and we got to put the name of the department on the pens and pencils. That'll work great. I said, no. That's stupid. Shut up. I didn't say that, but that's what I meant. So why do kids take classes in your department, urban studies? So they want to change the world, Colin. So they're teaching all these kids, they're giving them all these really good tools that people could use in real estate. These computer tools, these tools for understanding land use, lots and lots of really cool things, you can use in the private sector, as well as being a planning bureaucrat where you go around hassle property owners. Everybody signing up for their courses was in category number 2. They wanted to go around. They wanted to be have a cubicle at City Hall where they would basically hassle property owners. Yeah, 23-year-old kids. Yes, that happens all the time. Yes, they can shut down a $100 million project if they think the bridge is the wrong colored blue. Yes, that does happen. Yes, it did happen. So anyway, I said, why don't you tell your kids to get a real job and just mind their own damn business? Come in here, study this stuff. Why don't you guys teach them something where they can make some money and tell them just to mind their own business, go out there and make the world a better place, but do it without bugging other people. That didn't go over too well. So they're not going to be inviting me to Bernard College anytime soon because that's enshrined in their mission statement. It's a very exclusive place, very hard to get into. They let in like 9% of the applicants. By the way, that's like a big number now. Like how many people you let in, what percent? That's one of the reasons they encourage so many minorities to apply. That's like a good way to get your applicant number way up. And your percentage down. Oh yeah, we only accept 7% of people here, Colin. Well, how many people ever had a chance to apply even before they applied? Oh, about most of them. So that's what Bernard is. You're not real. They're just so down with the cause. 6 months ago, somebody named them like one of the most anti-Semitic campuses in the country because they were down with boycott, disinvestment, and something with S against the state of Israel. And lots of Palestinian activists giving anti-Semitic stuff out on the campus all the time up there. So that's just a hint of what it's like on these campuses. These campuses are like boot camps, ideological boot camps, where the liberal professors are enforcing the ideology, but you don't have to enforce it too much because everybody's pretty much already down with it. And if somebody does somehow accidentally stray from what the Liberal Party line is, no, your students and your professors will put you back in line or you will be ostracized. Now, they're very uptight places. Despite you look at the catalogs, you look at the website, you see all these women, they want to be empowered. Go to Bernard, be empowered. Go to the big city, be empowered. Go anywhere you want. Do anywhere you want. Do anything you want. Don't listen to Colin Flaherty that say, if you go into that neighborhood near Harlem, you're stupid because it's dangerous and they will target you for violence. Her grandmother talked to a reporter before somebody had told the grandmother to shut up. Her grandmother said, yeah, she was naive. She didn't know where she could go and couldn't go. So she walked into a park. It's either called Morningside. Is that what it's called? Morningside or Morning Bright? I think it's called Morningside Park. If you look it up, they'll tell you this is a park that is in Harlem, right next to Columbia. And nobody goes to Morningside. Generations of kids have gone through those colleges not having once gone in that park because everybody knows white people are not welcome there at the threat of violence and death. And that's what happened here. All because the people on those campuses just couldn't bring themselves to say, hey, white people are targets of black people around here. You guys have to know that. They probably told them the opposite. Now the girl is dead. For what? Sacrificed on the altar of this social justice warrior education. I mean, it's exactly the same thing down in the Bronx. I mean, everybody's just afraid to bell the cat. Who's going to say, yeah, the black people have been targeting us here in Brooklyn just the way they target students at Columbia. Now they got another girl the other night. Are we allowed to say that? Everybody looks around silently. Everybody's shaking their head. Nope. Why aren't we allowed to say that? Well, we don't even know why we're not allowed to say that. We just know we're not allowed to say it. And if we say it, we are removed from the public square. So the price we have to pay to remain in the public square is to lie about this level of black crime, violence, mayhem, and dysfunction? The answer is yes. And now we have to sacrifice this girl for this? For what? How long can that continue? Not forever.
Being black is exhausting.
Hey, as long as we're on college stuff, let's stay on college stuff for a minute. 2 items from college. One I first heard about from Scott Greer. I think he wrote a book about affirmative action and white hostility on campus. What's the name of your book, Scott? No College for Old White Men or something like that. Anyway, good book. Received a lot of attention. A lot of people really like it. If you want to know what's going on with colleges, go take a look at Scott's book. A lot of other good places keeping an eye on the colleges too. The Campus Reform, College Fix. Anyway, here's a story out of Oklahoma City Law School. They just suspended, then expelled one of their students because he was posting flyers on their campus with the most hateful, vituperative, hostile, nasty message you can possibly imagine. They expelled him for putting up a flyer that said, "It's okay to be white."
How dare you?
Then the paper did a big long story about how terrible it is to say that. And they quoted the Anti-Defamation League again, reminding everybody that, oh yeah, this is a reminder of hate. And the same group who will not condemn black people for targeting Jews are making up stuff about white kids in Oklahoma that get them kicked out of law school because they put up a little flyer that says it's okay to be white. Kid never put his hands on anybody. Never touched anybody, never threatened anybody. They had the FBI question that kid before they expelled him. And now the school officials at Oklahoma City are putting their hands up and going, "Don't worry, parents. This campus is safe. You don't have to worry about this campus. We're not going to tolerate those white supremacists putting up flyers that say it's okay to be white." Oh, by the way, there'll be a meeting of the black law students and the Hispanic law students and the Indian law students and the gay law students and the old people law students and the female law students and the Amish law students and the Eskimo law students. They're all taking up 12 separate rooms, and we'll be having refreshments in each and every room. Please come if you belong to one of those groups. It's weird how little self-awareness every single one of these institutions has. Now we move on over to Temple University, the same kind of a slightly different deal at Temple. Many stories we've done here on Temple about white kids, targets of black violence. At Temple, they sat Temple right inside one of the nastiest ghettos in America, North Philadelphia. So this kid makes a 10-second TikTok video, and if you old dudes don't know what TikTok is, it's the thing now. You make short comic videos, usually with people dancing. You put some music in. So what this kid did was he popped into these ghetto. He popped into like a block away from Temple where they have what True to Roof calls plywood curtains. He showed people pictures of the ghetto. And every time you saw one of these houses, you would just hear something from Real Housewives of Atlanta where they were using the word ghetto. That's it. And he posted it. And some black person posted on Twitter, says something like, "I can't believe you let one of your students do this. Are you aware of this? Are you aware of the racism, the hate, the stereotyping that's going on here? You got to do something about that." This, of course, is a black person doing what they love to do. They love doing this more than studying, more than picking up a skill, more than doing something useful. Their big hobby is catching a white person in an imaginary act of white racism. So that's what he did here, and the people at Temple University put their arms in the air. This is a place where they never tire of discussing how much white people suck. It's a center of critical race theory, which says white people suck all the time. So anyway, Temple University, they dutifully told people how disturbed they were, how they're not going to accept that on their campus. It was very harmless, and now they're going to get to the bottom of it. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. Now, this was a way bigger reaction than Temple University had when a couple years ago, 200 black people rampaged through Temple University, put 6 white students in the hospital, and Temple University just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, we don't really, we don't really approve of that happening here. No, they didn't do shit. Pardon my bad language. Hey, let's break it up a little bit with an update on our Christmas carols. So I mentioned it last night. We packed up our Christmas carols, 9 of them, plus the barbershop song, Come to the Conclusion, the media collusion is wrapped up. You know, that one, except that guy sings it better than I do. The guy's name is Alan, the barbershop song guy. I thought it was going to take a couple weeks, but I hoped a couple days. It took a couple hours. Those songs, by the time you hear this podcast on Friday, if you hear it like in the middle of the morning, those songs should be up. Let me tell you where you could find them. I think they're going to be available pretty widespread, but right away they're going to be at HTTP, of course, to begin with, store.cdbaby.com/CD/Colin Flaherty. So CD as in compact disc, but they're streaming, so you download them. And as we were talking about last night, Alan, the song guy, it's all his deal. His idea, his music. But if you read the liner notes and if you read the metadata on the thing, it might seem like I had more to do with it than I actually did, other than, inspiring the things with our material here. But they're his songs. But because we're still living in a world where people like Alan, the barbershop song guy, if he gets doxxed, that would have significant consequences to his family life. So we don't want to do that. So I basically listed myself as the author and the this and the that, and we're splitting the $8 billion we're going to make from that. So you know what? Mr. Allen, the barbershop quartet song guy, this is a good time to hear one.
Have yourself a merry fella Christmas. Listen to our lies. Crime is down as long as you don't trust your eyes. Through the years we've all observed together dues in courts. Crime is down as long as you don't file reports. Media seems to permit spewing bullshit folklore. Faithful friends who are dear to us shed a tear with us once more. Arm yourself and protect your family if your state allows. Maybe things will change, but I don't see how. So have yourself a merry fella Christmas now.
Boy, when it rains, it pours around here. Just yesterday, we did a story about the fellas using cars to hit old white ladies, knock them down with the car. Then you get out of the car. They think you're coming to help. The only thing you're coming to do is help themselves to your pocket, purse, and your cell phone, and your money, and your belongings, and your car keys, if you've got any. So we did 3 of those stories yesterday. Now today we get 3 more. Fellas using their cars for very bad intentions, often fatal.
Yeah, from charging documents that just became available, we know that the suspect took off in a red Jeep Wrangler. Investigators had actually come here to where we are in Sunnyside to his mother's house, hoping to find him. They have not, but they are looking for him, and they're paying extra close attention to his social media feeds. To look through Tavoris Dwayne Henderson's social media feeds is to see a man who loves his guns and grills. Weapons are featured prominently in his photos, and investigators believe he is currently armed and dangerous. The traffic stop overnight that ended with the tragic murder of Nassau Bay Police Sergeant Kayla Sullivan actually began as a series of events last Sunday. Court records show Henderson allegedly kidnapped the mother of his 2 children from this Top Golf parking lot on the west side. He then allegedly drove her a few blocks away, where he let her go when she said her mother was on the way. We found the woman and her mom today.
I think the kid is just having a breakdown right now.
Sheila Johnson says Henderson has been in and out of her daughter's life for years. She is well aware of his various arrests by law enforcement, including his prominent tattoo you can see from the mugshots. Henderson himself even featured one of his releases from jail on his Instagram feed. Johnson says police have been at their home looking for Henderson, but they have no idea where he might be.
I think it's awful, but I don't have any recollection of anything that's going on.
A Salem man is in jail tonight on several charges, including assault, after court papers show he continuously rammed his car into a pregnant woman's car. A neighbor caught the whole thing on camera and stopped that man from getting away.
And down in Franklin, Tennessee, a shoplifting crew, which I think the story is they were from Chicago. They were just kind of doing a magical mystery tour around the Midwest and the South. A cop caught them shoplifting in one place, tried to stop them, told them to get out of the car. They took the car and hit the cop with the car. He survived, and they caught the 4 lovely ladies with about $23,000 worth of other stuff. Not to worry, that was a non-violent crime for most of the people involved there, so they'll be getting out of jail soon. Oh, you know, there was an interesting / weird story this morning. Somebody sent, or one of our viewers, Stan, sent it to me. And it was a story about a bunch of chiefs, heads of the police unions, FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, in these different big cities. They all met at the White House, about 20 of them, looked like 15, 20 of them. They went and talked to President Trump. They were all talking about something we've been talking about here for a long time, the new Soros DAs. So Soros has elected people in Philly, St. Louis, Kansas City, Chicago, and there's lots of other places he's elected people, but even more significant than the places where he's elected people, the other district, Boston, the other district attorneys around the country have gotten the message. We are arresting too many black people. We cannot arrest our way out of this mess. We're going to start raising the level, like for shoplifting, up to $1,000. We're going to just stop arresting people for the quote-unquote petty crimes so we can go after the real people, the murderers. Well, if you listen to the people in these cop unions, they'll tell you they're not even going after them. They're letting them go too. So one after another, these guys from police unions in Philly and all these other cities around the country got up to the microphone and said, listen, we're catching them. The new district attorneys are letting them go. You know, we even got a U.S. attorney up in Philadelphia who put Krasner, the district attorney there, on notice saying, hey, if you keep doing that, I will prosecute them federally. And he's doing that. But these guys are quite proud of the fact that there are too many black people in prison. They're quite proud of the fact that they are on the tip of the spear of letting them go. And what the cops were saying today is what we've been documenting here for a year, is that when you let them go, they go right back on the streets doing the same thing that got them put in prison in the first place. And guess what? It wasn't smoking a joint. Okay? Get rid of that fairy tale right now. There aren't any people in prison for smoking a joint. It probably would have been too uncomfortable, but had I been in the room, I would have gently raised my hand and said, Mr. President, a year ago, you were at the head of this party, this criminal justice reform party, small p, party. And I'm not just talking about the law, the federal law you sign, because most people are not in federal custody. They're in state or local custody. I'm talking about how you really gave that criminal justice reform movement a big boost, a lot of credibility by joining it lock, stock, and barrel, by reminding all the black people in America, there's too many black people in prison, and you're going to let them out. And by the way, Trump, I love the guy, but this is true. He was not shy about reminding the black people that they now owed him a whole bunch of stuff because he let black people out of prison. Oh yeah, they've been presenting bills for services for that. I mean that in a completely acceptable political way. Though here's the weird thing about that, and I think Trump figured this out about 2 months ago, but now it's getting more obvious every day, especially during this impeachment thing. I mean, we played a video the other day of Al Green talking about how we have to impeach Trump because of the sins of slavery and racism, and Trump's a racist. Did you see one black person jump up anywhere in the country and say, hey, Trump just let a bunch of black people out of prison for no reason whatsoever. They're still dangerous as hell, but he did it because they're black. So that's nothing. You mean, so that's not racist, is it? Did anybody jump up? Did Van Jones jump up and say that? I don't see it. I don't see anybody rallying to Trump's side. And I know they got these polls out there saying Trump's going to get, 2,000% of the black vote this year or something like that next year. Okay. I keep asking, can you show me one election where the black people deserted the Democratic Party and went for somebody else? Just one, anywhere. Can you show me where that's happening outside of the fevered imagination of you and your poster? I go, oh, Colin, you just wait and see. Okay, I'll wait and see. If it happens, I'll be the first one to say this is a sea change. But this is something that Republicans do every 4 years. They trot out a bunch of black people and they say, well, this year it's different. Black people are going to vote Republican. They never do. I don't see any groundswell of black support for Trump during this impeachment thing. Do you? All right, it wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't do this at least once a week. Remind people of the large-scale episodes of black mob violence in schools. This one down in Florida.
Right now, nearly a dozen people are facing charges after a fight at a Brevard County school got out of hand.
Police say the brawl started yesterday afternoon on the campus of Palm Bay Magnet High School that is just off Babcock Street in Melbourne near the Palm Bay city limit. Mark Lehman is there live for us this morning. And Mark, several law enforcement agencies got involved in this.
Yeah, we're told officers from Melbourne, West Melbourne, Palm Bay Police, and the Sheriff's Office all responded here to the school yesterday. This coming after a large-scale brawl erupted on campus, a scene one agency described as mayhem. A video from our news partner, Florida Today, shows law enforcement responding to the school after the fight first broke out. Melbourne police say it started between two students and one of their resource officers tried to break up the fight. During that confrontation, they say one of the girls attacked the SRO and several other students also became involved. Officers from other agencies were called for backup, and once everything was under control, 10 students were arrested on various charges that include battery on law enforcement, disorderly conduct, and resisting arrests. Now, the brawl comes less than a week after a similar scene in Port Orange in Volusia County. That's where nearly a dozen students were taken into custody after a large-scale fight during lunch hour at Atlantic High School. 20-year-old Gregory DeVos, an older brother of one of the students, was arrested. He's facing charges after police say he showed up on campus with brass knuckles during the fight. That resulted in security changes for the school. But as we come back out here live this morning, it's unknown what, if any, changes will come as a result of the fight here yesterday. We will be watching for that. We're also working to learn more about an adult relative who was arrested yesterday after all of this. She is facing charges for disorderly conduct and refusing to leave school property.
Hey, let's follow up on something also we did yesterday. The Librarian Story. Remember we did a story about librarians under attack? And, we had a lot of people, a lot of cops and a lot of people who run the police department and district attorneys. They look at this stuff and they go, wow, I can't figure out why that's happening. And we showed it was a pattern. Man, I forgot the real nasty one here from Sacramento area about a year ago. Fellow was going into the public library, treating it as if it were his living room, his bathroom, making a mess, making loud noises, disturbing other people. Finally, after an extended period, they say, hey, my man, you got to go. I'm talking an extended period of days and weeks where they put up with this. Finally, they said, you're out of here. He went and got a gun, came back and killed the librarian, the white librarian. And you want to tell me that things are not topsy-turvy in this country everywhere we look, from the libraries of Sacramento to the ivy-covered halls of Columbia University? Good luck with that. Here's another weird story. This is a story. We did this story a couple weeks ago, but it's getting a lot worse. And I think the irony here is just so significant. I'll just bring it to your attention briefly. So Seattle is a place where the city is run by the social justice warriors, including the police department. Can't get cops to stay on the force, and they can't get cops to apply, but they're quite proud of all their progressive policies there. So they have a courthouse downtown, and for the last year, the courthouse has been under attack from all this street crime, some of it rather serious. A lot of it fellas, but not all of it fellas. There aren't that many fellas in Seattle, only about 7%. Anyway, this is the law enforcement people. These are the sheriffs, the cops, the judges, the DAs. And now they're all meeting. They're all getting together, and they can't figure out how to keep the courthouse safe. They cannot even figure out how to protect themselves. Boy, if you live in Seattle, you've got to be saying, man, if those clowns cannot even figure out how to protect themselves at a courthouse, what are they going to do in my neighborhood?
Our front door to justice needs to be open.
And any time now, it will.
It's not if we're going to get assaulted, it's a matter of when. I've been a victim of assault on 3rd Avenue.
Brave public testimony from 11 court employees, so gripping one council member said it led the council to unanimously approve $600,000 in emergency funding to improve security outside the courthouse.
Nothing was more effective than looking in the faces of those men and women who've been assaulted just for coming to work.
The extra money will be used to post 2 deputies outside the courthouse with an emphasis here on 3rd Avenue. For months, Como's Project Seattle team has told you stories of crime along the corridor, even video of alleged assaults right in front of the courthouse. This one last month, another earlier this year. The money puts additional screeners at the security line, hires a marshal, and funds outreach workers on surrounding streets.
Isn't there a concern, though, that this might just be sort of spot protection and the problem will just move down 3rd Avenue?
We have 2 of the finest police agencies in the nation, frankly, the Seattle Police and the King County Sheriff, and they need more resources.
The short answer is yes. Judge Jim Rogers, who closed the courthouse's main entrance over safety concerns, is confident this is the place to start, especially knowing the money will only stretch until May. County and city leaders have vowed to work together to find a permanent solution. Councilmember Lambert thinks SPD should pay too.
What happens inside the building is our responsibility, but what happens outside the building is Seattle's responsibility. And if we're going to do their job, they need to pay us for doing their job.
Our Sheriff, Mitzi Johansson, and our Police Chief, Carmen Best, really cooperated together. We're very pleased in King County Superior Court.
Now, we can tell you just a little perspective here. Since January to September, there have been 160 assaults in the block just outside the courthouse. We also checked with SPD, and they tell us as of yesterday, they have responded, get this, to 605 crimes in that immediate area. And that, guys, adds up to nearly 6,000 hours of service, everything from patrolling to answering calls.
You know, the Seattle court system kind of reminded me of the newspapers we were talking about earlier. You know, on the outside, they look like they're a very solid and old institution that's going to last forever. But somebody comes in and pokes around a little bit, you realize that, boy, there's just nothing holding it together anymore. It's rotten in the middle, and all of a sudden you go up to it one day and it just all collapses from internal rot. Ditto with that court system we just saw in Seattle. I mean, you look at it and go, wow, man, they got the judges in there. They got the cops. They got everybody in there. And they can't even keep their own act together on the sidewalks outside of their own court. They can't even figure that out because they're so worried about what they're going to do with these people. I don't know how people who are so silly, so irresponsible about the most important responsibility of all, which is law enforcement. I don't know how they get in the places that they get. Speaking of silly people, let's go down to Baltimore. Somebody sent me this the other day. It's a couple years old, but it has Killer Mike on it. And it's old, but it's still fresh. And I got a kick out of it. Mostly because there's Killer Mike reminding everybody that the riots, everybody's got the riots in Baltimore all wrong. During the riots in Baltimore, all the black people were trying to stop the riots. And you know what? That's what they were trying to do in Ferguson, too. They were trying to stop the riots in Ferguson, too. Then you got this director, John Waters, who's a kind of a well-known white gay director. He was saying, oh, you guys got to get the white people in there, man. They'd be happy to join you. Yeah, John Waters doesn't have a clue as to what is inspiring these riots. And it's not what Killer Mike says it is.
All right, so Michelle Obama, let me ask the panel this question, was speaking this week, and she did invoke racism. She said, among other things, that she was followed in stores. I imagine you remember that, right? You've had that experience. Yep. She said, we all know the experience of going to a party and people assume you're the help. Mm-hmm. Okay, this got the usual suspects very angry. Rush Limbaugh said she was playing the race card. Laura Ingraham said a litany of victimization. They act like her very existence is kind of a deliberate provocation, but
I think they wanted her to go down to this, to Tuskegee, right, to this, where these working class Alabama kids, and actually just like give them the okie doke, right? To say, okay, because Barack and I are in the White House, like ding dong, racism's dead. That's what they wanted her to say. And the fact is, we don't do that with each other. We don't tell that lie, right? We actually tell the true American story of black people in this country, which is one of resilience. And resilience has two parts. It has struggle and it has overcoming. Absolutely. And so often the right wing just wants to deny either one of those parts, right? Either black people never struggle or they never overcome.
But you have to see, sometimes I'm so naive on racism, because it used to be, I grew up with like George Wallace and dumb racists that was easy to make fun of, right? But now they're like censors, you know, like stupid censors are easy to work with. But real racists today, they don't say it out loud. They're the scariest ones, you know? And they're like liberal censors. They're the scariest ones.
Were you in Baltimore when the riot happened?
Oh, yeah, but I feel, you know, the night Baltimore was burning, I was filming a cameo in the new Alvin the Chipmunk movie in Atlanta. So I may not be that qualified to talk about it, but
but he's your fan.
I know, but I was arrested in Baltimore in my life, and I was in a paddy wagon. They didn't break my back. So I guess, you know, but at the same time, there's a cop bar I hang out in, and they're very nice to me. So it just depends. But I know, here's how you solve it. Two ways you want to solve it, what I think in Baltimore, is one, like jury duty. Once a year, every family has to move to the exact economic opposite neighborhood and live there. They have to get their hair done there. They have to send their kids to school there. They got to go to the store there, and then you move back, right? The other one is, don't make it a race thing, make it a class thing. There's just as many poor white people in Baltimore. Poor white people don't riot. Rich white people do. So rich white people, college kids. Right. I mean, who would, if there were any rioters in Baltimore that were white, they were upscale,
but
right?
When rich white kids riot, they call it celebrating.
Okay, yeah, well, did Che Guevara take toilet paper? You know, I mean, really, I'm for that. Toilet paper is expensive. It's a fortune when you go in and buy those paper
Why did they burn down the CVS?
Why? Here's the thing: go burn down a country club.
Yeah, people always say that. Well, they burned down the CVS. They stole stuff they needed. You know, you need medicine, you need socks, you might need a blood pressure regulator. But when people say, why do you burn down a CVS? Why are you burning down your own community? Well, because of black people being denied loans, because of black people being snookered out of their homes and gentrifiers coming in or not coming in. Because that's happened, you live in a community you don't own. You're a renter. You're just occupying a space. The police are there. They're occupying you. So when you say burn down my community, what did I burn? Most CVSs do not hire people who work within 10 miles of there because they're afraid of theft or them letting their friends take something. So what did I destroy besides an economic eyesore that won't hire me anyway, overcharges me for drugs, and I got to wait till the next morning for my painkiller?
Are we saying no small store owners got burned out in Baltimore?
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there were a litany of black men who had T-shirts on standing in front of stores, protecting stores. And that's not what the media showed you.
Absolutely.
The media went out and found children. And found children and said, hey, let's show these kids wilding out and make that the representation of Baltimore, and that was a lie.
But they need to get the poor white people to hook up with them, too. Because there's Sandtown. Have you ever been to Pigtown?
Yes, sir.
You know, they team up together.
And they did that in Ferguson.
You know.
Yeah,
All right,
they did that in Ferguson.
When you niggas gon' unite and kill the police motherfuckers. When you niggas gon' unite and kill the police motherfuckers.
You know, one of my favorite people on this planet has given us all one of my favorite answers to the questions that people ask here. The person is author, novelist, successful novelist, K.M. Breakey. And he has given us the answer to a question a lot of people ask around here. Colin, what are we going to do? What are we supposed to do? I mean, everybody wants a magic bullet that if we do this one thing, get Congress to pass this one law, everything we talk about here, all the black violence, dysfunction, mayhem, chaos, it's just going to go away. If we get the parents involved, Colin, we get the ministers involved, that's going to do it. Yeah, parents and ministers are accomplices, not law-abiding citizens. Sorry about that. So anyway, Ken, I don't even know if we're supposed to dox him giving out his first name. I think it's okay, but he calls himself K.M. Breakey. That's how you'd find his new book on Amazon. His first book was called Johnny and Jamal. Remember that? This channel, this platform actually made an appearance in that book, because I think that's what inspired him to write the book, because he saw Obama was at a memorial service for the victims of Dylan Roof down in either North or South Carolina. And he talked about Johnny getting a job interview and Jamal not getting a job interview. So K.M. Breakey wrote a very good book called Johnny and Jamal. And he kind of broke it down, all these different conflicts, how all these things people go with. And he's been writing books ever since. This is at least his fourth one that I know about. And it's called Fearless Men, But Few. And it's about Ireland. You know, we get so much mail from Ireland. We have so many people living in the States who follow Ireland. We got a big, really, really important viewer, listener up in the Philly area. Calls himself Shamrock, which I think in Gaelic means Shamrock. He's really into the Ireland thing. He sends me stuff from Ireland. And there's a lot of immigration in Ireland. There's a lot of argy-bargy, a lot of violence from the immigrants. I mean, the immigrants from Africa are getting off the boat. Next day, they're out there at a rally talking about how they're not getting enough free stuff in Ireland because of white racism. A lot of that going on. But you know, the great thing about literature and fiction is that it helps us tell the truths that are otherwise too unpalatable to tell in a nonfiction way, which is what some people accuse us of doing here, because we don't really varnish the whole thing here, right? We look people in the eye and go, yeah, we got a real problem with black dysfunction in this country. Real problem. That's why in Ireland, poetry was always so popular, because you could use poetry to disguise the meaning of stuff from your British overlords. Thinking of one song in particular called 4 Green Fields. 4 green fields, each one was a jewel. Strangers came and tried to take them away. There were 4. Anyway, it goes on, right? Well, the 4 green fields is a poetic way of saying the 4 counties of North Ireland. So when Willie Shields and all of his buddies in the IRA were in the South or in the North trying to crank up some anti-North, anti-Protestant fervor, they would sing that song, apparently an innocent song, but everybody knew what they were singing about, gave it a lot more power. And that's what Kent is doing with his books. He's using poetry, he's using literature, he's using fiction to present us this story in a way that a lot of us can digest it and make sense out of it and seeing the big picture and the little picture as well, and he does it quite well. So the name of this book, we're going to hear an excerpt from it in a minute. The name of this book is Fearless Men, But Few. Here's what Kent says about his book. Eamon Clark is a proud Irishman. He's conquered the playing field. Now he's a hero in the broadcast booth. He's larger than life, a national treasure. But things aren't all rosy. The land he loves has caught a vicious strain of progressivism. As Irish homeless sleep on the streets, Ireland is flooded with the world's waifs and strays. 'Tis a jarring disruption, Kent reminds us. Some call it an act of war. They keep turning up, sometimes in the dead of night. They're given food and shelter and clothing. For them, opportunities abound in this wet and cold alien land. For them, everything's free. Why is the government doing this? Is it their intent to sow chaos? To destroy Ireland? When Eamon's hometown is hit, he vows to fight, to risk everything, but it's not easy with his own life spiraling. When a dangerous nemesis emerges, Eamon's problems multiply. Is it too late to save his ancient land? Eamon and a spirited band of patriots say not. And they're channeling Pierce and Collins to get the job done. Unfortunately, they have no idea what they're up against. Wow. That's a pretty accurate summation of that book. Why don't we hear a little excerpt from it right now?
Turned out the media were, pardon the Irish, full of shite. It's not that Castlegarry residents wanted asylum seekers treated poorly. Of course not. They simply wanted no part of direct provision in the first place. None. Well, except the lodge owner, but he was a Dubliner at heart. And get this, with residents already spitting mad, OMSI had the gall to ask, did they perhaps have a spare room available? You know, in case the new centre filled up. Good effing Christ, as if they weren't bilking the Irish of enough tax dollars. Surely to be. Eamon's old granda got one of the distasteful dispatches. It came on OMSI's immaculate letterhead and was signed by the regional director, a notorious snake in the grass. Eamon learned of it one bright Sunday morning, and he was beside himself with anger. He wasn't alone. The offensive missive was taking a thrashing on Facebook. You believe this, Claire? He pointed at the odious letter. They sprung it on us. Where was the consultation? Where was the... They've been talking about it for months, Eamon. A few pressers, that's what I saw. They were skulking about, making backroom deals. That's what they were doing. And why would they make a big deal of it? That'd give the crazies time to burn the place down. So you admit they did it on the sly. She sighed. You don't even live there, Eamon. What do you care? Me granda does. And before long it'll be me da's, then mine. Castlegarry's in our blood. 'Tis part of who we are. We've had that wee plot hundreds of years. You know it well, Claire. And you'll have it 100 more. It's not going anywhere. Jesus, Claire, you don't get it, do you? Eamon stood. Maybe you don't want to. Is your da making money on this too? That's enough, Eamon. Now too much is what it is. Eamon. He shook his head. For all his faults, he hated strife with Claire. To be sure, there'd been more than enough lately, and it had little to do with immigrants. He glanced in her direction, hoping to make amends before departing. 'Twas not to be. She froze him out, and his resentment returned with a flush. I better be off if I'm to make it in time, he said gruffly. 'Twas game day, and Eamon had a full slate as usual. Driving to the studio felt like escape. From problems, from politics, from reality in general. It took him to his childhood. Once again he was a young fella, innocent and free and full of hope. Not to mention, 'twas no better cure for a hangover than a day at the park. Hardly mattered that he didn't play. He was still one of the lads. No matter the locker room, he was welcomed with smiles and jokes and backslaps. They called him a legend. They wanted pictures. They wanted to shake his hand. But today, the nostalgic reminiscences couldn't cut through the clouds, literally and metaphorically. The rain was coming in buckets, as it only does in the west of Ireland. What would the new arrivals think of this, Eamon wondered. Where were they even from? 'Twas not Buckinghamshire, nor Scotland, Germany, or the Netherlands. You can bet your arse they were from Africa. or the Middle East, or some godforsaken shithole like Pakistan. Eamon passed the Milligan farm and he spotted old man Milligan braving the elements, scurrying about, tending the chickens. The family held only a small fraction of their once mighty estate, a rural tract not far from Galway's sprawl. Still plenty like 'em, but for how long? Eamon tapped the horn and got a friendly wave. This is the Ireland of old, he thought, and it's disappearing. A new version was taking shape and slowly, inevitably, displacing all he knew and loved, washing over tradition and heritage. Was there a way to stop it? Was he a bad person for wanting to? A racist, a fascist, a xenophobe? Feck no. This, what was it, the march of globalism? It made no sense, yet it was claiming fresh ground every day. It made Eamon's head spin, and his head was no great shakes in the first place. Never was these days.
So this isn't much of a spoiler alert, but the fellas in Ireland and in Europe and in Australia and in lots of other places are not really fitting in with the law, the customs of civilized behavior any more than they do here. Glad we have another voice out there to talk about that in a much more persuasive fashion. Congratulations on a great book, Kent. I hope you guys that are listening to this enjoy that book as much as I enjoyed it, as much as the great Willie Shields enjoyed it, as much as a lot of the guys in our Brex Mill crew enjoyed it. Even if enjoying a book like this, pretty much guaranteed to make the black kids angry. I'll talk to you Monday.
It came upon a midnight clear, a 500 juvenile fight. It happened every week this year, a chocolate city night. There's some who say they won't live here, but they're racist and too uptight. The citizens all hide in fear, a chocolate city night. The public subway is suicide, a criminal's delight. Make peace with God, don't go outside, a chocolate city night. But you'll be safe as long as you don't stop at a traffic light. Upstanding citizens cower and cry, a chocolate